Lord Voldemort is a rubbish villain. Now, I don't think that's that controversial of an opinion, bearing in mind most of the Harry Potter books end in Voldemort being bested by a wizard who's barely even been in school long enough to know where the bathroom is. What's so strange about this, though, is that according to the rest of the story, up until Voldemort met baby Harry on that fateful night in Godric's Hollow, he was pretty much on a one-way path to taking over the wizarding world. Excluding Albus Dumbledore, of course, Lord Voldemort could essentially slay anybody in his way, and him and his fellow Death Eaters were on their way to winning the First Wizarding War. Now, of course, everyone knows why Voldemort fell when he met baby Harry, and if you don't, well, to be honest, maybe go and read or watch Harry Potter, then come back to this video, because it'll all make a lot more sense then. But back to my point, Voldemort's fall then, and most of Voldemort's defeats to Harry are explained well throughout the series, so that's not my issue. My issue is actually with the writing. Why tell us that Voldemort is this insanely powerful, all-conquering, incredible dark wizard, but never actually show this in the books? I mean, the Harry Potter series could easily be renamed to I wonder what wish-washy plan the weird bald villain with no nose will think up this time, only to once again be outsmarted by a boy who still isn't old enough to buy a can of Monster series. Surely the best way to tell the reader just how scary and threatening your main villain is actually let them be scary and threatening, and every once in a while, just let them succeed at something. For me, this already great series could have been even better if in just one, but maybe a couple of the books, Lord Voldemort actually stood tall in the end, and convinced us the reader just for a split second that, hang on, maybe Harry might actually lose this battle. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to take the ending of all 7 Harry Potter books and present an idea in which each one could either have an alternative ending or things added or things taken away that would make Lord Voldemort feel like a more credible villain at the end of each book. If you're new, please do drop a like on the video, hit subscribe, turn on post notifications, but without further ado, let's get started with number 1, the Philosopher Stone. So we're starting things off with possibly the perfect example of where my issue stems from. In this book, Lord Voldemort is revealed as the big bad villain at the end who was trying to steal the stone all along, but fails epically. Not only does he not steal the stone, but he doesn't even come close. He's completely outsmarted by Albus Dumbledore. Now look, there's not a lot you can do or change to make this scenario that much better, because ultimately Voldemort cannot take the stone here. If he does, that kind of changes the entire rest of the series, and whilst a video looking at what would have happened if Lord Voldemort had successfully stolen the Philosopher's Stone does sound fun and is one to add to my list of future video ideas, that's not the purpose of today's video. Instead though, the one thing that I would change is Voldemort's reaction to failing. In the book, Harry passes out, then Dumbledore shows up just in time. Voldemort flees the scene and leaves Quirrell to die. Now instead, I would just have Voldemort actively kill Professor Quirrell. Now I know it's a very small change, but I think it does a stronger job in highlighting the ruthlessness and sheer lack of care that Voldemort has for anybody or anything other than himself. You see, fleeing the scene and leaving Quirrell to die is one thing, but actively killing somebody for failing him, that puts him on another level of villain straight away. Now I'm sure you're all wondering, how exactly would Voldemort in this form actually kill Professor Quirrell? Well, to be honest, he's literally just like a vapor at this point, and it's a magical world, so at this point, I reckon you just use your imagination. In my head, I think he flies down Quirrell's throat, essentially causing Quirrell to choke to death on a vaporized being. But hey, that's just me. Let me know your ideas in the comments below. Number 2, the Chamber of Secrets. So this is a really tough one to change because, yes, the villain is Voldemort, but it's also not Voldemort at the same time. It's a memory of Voldemort in his old diary. Now this kind of complicates things because how can you make the memory of something seem a bit stronger when they're not even there? Plus, don't forget, we still need to make sure that the diary gets destroyed because it's obviously a Horcrux and this is going to become very important later on. Well, hear me out because I think I found a solution that fixes everything. I would remove Voldemort entirely. Okay, let me explain this, because you can't completely remove Voldemort, or Tom Riddle as he's referred to more in this book, obviously because he's such a main part of the plot, but I would remove the ghostly form of Tom Riddle that we see in the chamber. Just because, in my opinion, I think seeing this physical / ghostly form of Voldemort kind of makes it feel like he actually is defeated once again by Harry, even though as I've already said, he's sort of not at the same time. Just to remove this feeling entirely, therefore, I'd have Harry enter the chamber, find Ginny unconscious, and then pick up the diary. But this time, essentially, the diary just explains in writing everything that the ghostly form of Tom Riddle tells Harry anyway. The diary tells Harry that once it's sucked all of the life out of Ginny Weasley, Lord Voldemort himself will return. From here, everything goes the same as in the books. Harry slays the basilisk and saves Ginny's life. And just to make sure that Voldemort can't come back, he still stabs the diary. In my opinion, this small change just shifts the perception of what happens ever so slightly. It becomes that bit more clear that Harry has just defeated an older memory of Lord Voldemort rather than Voldemort himself, which to me is a very small but important distinction. Number 3, the Prisoner of Azkaban. Okay, so remember before when I said I was going to suggest changes to the endings of all 7 Harry Potter books? Well, I'll hold my hands up. I lied. You see, going back through the books, I realised Prisoner of Azkaban is the only one where I actually wouldn't change a thing. Now, before you click off this video and tell me in the comments how much this little fib has ruined your day, I apologise. It will not happen again. Trust me, I've got loads of stuff to say about the remaining 4 books in this video. But back to Prisoner, and the only reason why I wouldn't really change anything is because, well, Voldemort is not involved in this book at all. Now, yes, maybe I could come up with some crazy way that Voldemort is revealed as the ultimate villain of this story, or find a way to force him in somehow, but I don't think that's necessary. I mean, the first 2 books leading up to this point have literally both had that exact same conclusion, where the whole time we either don't know or think we know who the villain is, but ultimately Lord Voldemort is revealed as the villain in the end. And then from Goblet of Fire onwards, obviously Lord Voldemort comes back to his body and becomes the major talking point of the series. So having this fairly short but completely Voldemort-free book, almost in the middle of the series, just changes things up a little bit for me in a way that I find really refreshing and entertaining, and quite necessary. So yeah, sorry everyone, but I'm actually not going to change a thing, so let's just move on. To number 4, the Goblet of Fire. Credit where it's due, Voldemort creates a plan for Harry's 4th year at Hogwarts that goes almost perfectly. Harry is entered into the Triwizard Tournament, and the man who puts his name into the goblet remains pretty much undetected throughout the entire school year until the very, very end. Harry wins, well, joint wins, and ends up in the graveyard where his blood is taken by Wormtail to bring Lord Voldemort back to his body. What does go wrong, however, is that Harry is able to escape alive from the graveyard and notify Albus Dumbledore that Lord Voldemort has returned within an hour of his return. Now, the tricky thing here is I can't actually change that much about the ending to this book because, well, Harry has to escape, otherwise he just dies here and the series ends. And I assume that if you've made it this far into a Harry Potter YouTube video, then like me, you probably don't want the series to end at the end of book 4 and you'd rather it carries on a little bit more. So really the only thing that I can change is how it went wrong. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take every single little bit of credit away from Harry and turn this into the biggest fluke ever. So how am I going to do this? Well, first of all, when Harry and Cedric arrive in the graveyard, they do not move away from the portkey. Wormtail turns up instantly, killing Cedric on the spot. He collapses and lands on top of the portkey. That'll be very important later. Then everything goes exactly the same as it goes in the book, up until the point where Harry and Voldemort's wands are connected, and the ghostly figures of those who have been killed previously by Voldemort's wand appear. In this scenario, rather than Harry's parents telling him that they will try and create a scenario that allows him to escape or give him a little bit of time to escape, they just urge him not to let go. Harry struggles against the sheer power coming from Voldemort's wand up until he trips. He loses his footing, stumbling against something lying prone on the floor, Cedric's dead body. This stumble causes Harry to lose his footing, falling on top of both Cedric and the portkey, just as the portkey leaves, taking Harry and Cedric's dead body back to the start of the maze. This slight change means that Harry's escape is now 100% a fluke. Nothing done by either Harry or the ghostly figures is actually what stops Voldemort from killing Harry. It's just complete luck. Now, is this some BS writing that is just awfully convenient? Absolutely. But if it protects Lord Voldemort's credibility just minutes after he's come back to his full power, I think it's worth adding in. Number 5, The Order of the Phoenix. So The Order of the Phoenix was actually the easiest book on this list because if Voldemort's plan succeeded, then nothing actually changes. So I'm just going to let it succeed. You see, Voldemort's main plan in this book was to steal the prophecy from the Department of Mysteries, as he believed it may contain some key information that he needed to help him defeat Harry Potter. Now, this is obviously not the case. In fact, the prophecy is actually just a whole load of nothing really, but that's a topic for another video. All that the prophecy actually makes clear at this point is that Harry or Voldemort must die at the hands of the other. So realistically, even if Voldemort steals and hears the prophecy, he's still just going to try and kill Harry in the same way that he does. But in this scenario, he looks a little bit less of a lemon because one of his plans has actually worked. He's stolen it. So I think it's a pretty smart change, to be honest. And I'd still include his epic duel with Dumbledore because, well, it's awesome. And I actually think it makes Voldemort look pretty good because it shows him as being on a very similar dueling level to who we believe is the best wizard in the world. Number 6, The Half-Blood Prince. Half-Blood Prince was a tricky one because it's another book where we don't actually see Voldemort in the flesh. However, that leads me straight into what I would do differently. I'd add him in. So when Dumbledore is killed by Snape on top of the astronomy tower, it's overseen by a handful of Death Eaters who've been able to make it into Hogwarts thanks to the vanishing cabinet that Draco Malfoy has been fixing throughout the year in the Room of Requirement. This was an awesome power play from the Death Eaters, bearing in mind they're supposedly at this point taking over the wizarding world. So marching undetected onto Albus Dumbledore's territory, yeah, that's sick. But you know what would have been an even bigger power play? Voldemort himself showing up. Now I'd still have everything play out as it does. Draco disarms Dumbledore, Snape finishes the job off, and then have Lord Voldemort disappear way before the battle takes place downstairs. But simply allowing Voldemort to watch the only man he ever feared fall before his very eyes would have created an extremely powerful visual that basically shows that the power has swung entirely in the Death Eater's favour, creating a near possible mission for Harry and friends in the final book. Number 7, The Deathly Hallows. Okay, so trying to change the ending of the final book to make Voldemort look stronger is extremely difficult, bearing in mind Voldemort still has to die at the end of this one. So I'm just going to suggest one change, and one small change only because the ending of The Deathly Hallows is already epic. All I would do is delay the killing of Nagini slightly. You see, once Nagini is killed, there's still a fair chunk of action before Harry is revealed to still be alive. This essentially marks the end for Lord Voldemort because he no longer has any Horcruxes left, and at this point he's just got to accept he cannot kill Harry Potter. But what I think could have been slightly better in my opinion was if Harry revealed himself as still being alive just before Nagini was murdered. That way Voldemort would have still been completely flummoxed to see Harry alive, but he'd have still had that tiny ray of hope knowing that there was one Horcrux tethering him to life. Just during Harry and Voldemort's epic final standoff, Nagini goes to strike, but is intercepted by Neville Longbottom, who cuts off her head with the Sword of Gryffindor. Suddenly now, Voldemort's last hope has faded in front of his very eyes, and he knows the game is up. So there you have it. That is how I would change the ending of almost every Harry Potter book to improve the portrayal of Lord Voldemort as a villain. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, but most importantly, hit subscribe. We are on that road to 1K. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my ideas, and if not, let me know what you'd do instead. Thanks for watching. I'll hopefully see you next time.